what's going on? Welcome to the Risen Fallen podcast. For anybody that hasn't listened before, or if you're a returning listener, regardless, thank you for joining us today. You can obviously expect to hear open and authentic conversations about things like mental health, self-development, those types of things. Today, I'm blessed. I am joined. James Yount. Is it Yount or Yount or?
Yeah, you got it right the first time, Yount.
James Yount.
Yeah.
We
Yes,
just,
sir.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being here. We just connected, for those of you listening, on Instagram, and we've kind of just been exchanging DMs back and forth. We tried to do a little bit of a Zoom call last weekend, but it was just bad connection. But yeah, we've just been chatting back and forth, and I just want to kind of let you have the opportunity before we jump into this conversation to just kind of tell people like who you are and what you're all about, and I'll let you start us off, man. Kick it off.
All right, man. Well, I guess to sum it up, I'm a recovering addict who spent a good part of 25 years either deep in addiction or playing with addiction of drugs and alcohol, gambling, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was actually having a conversation. Funny, it's no one gets into it without having some fun until it's no longer fun. And my life became no longer fun. It became a very, very black, dark hole that I've worked. I take that back, that God has given me the tools to dig myself out of. Sum it up, man. I'm about faith. I'm about my family. I'm about fellowship, and I'm about fitness. Those four things have brought me from death's doorsteps to a place of joy and happiness. Joyfulness that I've never experienced in my life. I've gone from being a 350 plus pound obese tweaker, atheist, suicidally depressed, anxiety filled human being to 195 pounds of joy filled Christian. And so there's a lot to digest in that, but that kind of sums it up in as few words as possible.
Right, man. And so yeah, dude, we started linking up through DMs on Instagram, and then you sent me that other podcast that you were in, you were featured in, and I was listening to it, and as I was listening to it, because I listen to tons of podcasts while I work, I was like, man, yeah. I was like, man, I wish this was longer. I was just like really getting into it.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that, and it's crazy. I've not listened to a whole lot of it, mainly because I don't want to, I trust a lot of people who have listened to it. Like, you're a professional, this is what you do, or this is what you've done it. And so I judge your opinion, and others who have much more experience in either being guests or hosting podcasts. And my own immediate family everyone said it's just excellent, but I haven't really listened to a whole lot of it because I don't want to tear myself apart. And I know that sounds ridiculous. And I know what I said. You know what I mean? I know I got the bulk of everything that was spoken, but I don't want to waste the energy of critiquing myself. I'd rather I will listen to it. I listened to a big bulk of it this weekend, actually, I was on a retreat with the men from my church, and they wanted to get my testimony, and I felt like that was like a great place to start, because it was just easier than speaking it again because it's already been spoken. So not that I mind sharing, but sometimes when you're in a room full of people and the spotlight is on you, it's like, I don't want to sit there and stumble and go, that it has a bulk of my story in it. So yeah, man, I appreciate that. And I've gotten great feedback on it, and I'm anxious to continue to share my story and my experience.
Yeah, man. And I don't know if you've listened to.
Can you still hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Okay, just checking. My getting some lag in my video feed.
All good, man. All good. No, I just wanted to, guys, I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Gabor Mate. I just finished one of his books, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. He works on the downtown east side here, which is a section of Vancouver that's just plagued with addiction and homelessness. But
Is that I've been to Vancouver a number of times. Is that like East Hastings, like
yeah,
towards the yeah
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
familiar with it, brother. I smoked crack there once.
Yeah.
and then this homeless man that I smoked crack with wanted me to get on the last ferry to Victoria Island to get $10 hookers, and I'm like, bro, we're already smoking crack. We don't need $10 hookers.
Yeah, man.
This was one of the few times in my life I remember saying no to something that I was just like, this is obviously a bad idea.
You're like, I've got a line, bro, and we've already crossed it.
Yeah, dude, I'm smoking crack with the homeless. Like, dude, I'm not going and getting $10 hookers on Victoria Island at like 2:00 in the morning.
That's insanity, man. That's
Oh,
so
that's another
crazy.
life. And I mean, I never want to glorify my past sins, but if you can't laugh at yourself, like, who can you laugh at? You know what I mean? And it's like finding the humor in the darkness makes it a lot easier to get past the guilt, right, and the shame, because when we get deep in addiction, uh, the things that we do, especially as we grow past them, man, it can look very shameful. And something that I've tried to explain to somebody, or I've tried to explain, and this weekend was made very clearly to me, and I'm excited to get to share this because it's a new revelation, right? Um, you're familiar with the song "Amazing Grace." Everyone, I mean, I'm sure 90% of the globe is. Um, you know, when we've been blessed with grace and we get these new eyes full of the grace, and we haven't had that long between when you can still smell the darkness, right? You can still taste our past, man. You start looking through your lens of grace, and you're like, it's not like I feel the guilt anymore, but it's just like, how and why was I ever that human being? Like, I've changed so much, and especially in the last like 6 months. I mean, in the last 2 years, the changes have been astronomical, but there's been these really deep, impactful growths as I've gone from a very focused on physical health walk, and then a mental health walk, and then God had a plan of a spiritual walk. Like, this is the spirituality part of it was like very low on my list of things to start getting into once I wanted to get healthy. But God was like, dude, I got a plan for you, brother, and it's mine and not yours. And so that's been it. But it's like, man, we being able to look through the lenses with grace, with the eyes of grace, and going back and looking at some of the things I've did and deep in my addiction, like some horrible things, like stole jewelry from my wife and went and pawned it so I could get dope, or gambling my son's birthday away. Like, those are some deep rooted things that, like, man, being able to look back at grace and just go, wow, how was I ever that human being? But I wasn't me. It was the possession of the drugs. And I think when we get in that deep into that addiction, I think people, like, to move past it, part of it is realizing that that wasn't you. You know what I mean? That was a lot of compound of yuck. It's like, it's part of the reason why I hate that. I'm sure you're familiar with it. You've heard people say, embrace the suck. I just absolutely detest that saying, because I've worked really hard to escape the suck, and the last thing I ever want to do is hug it and get comfortable with it. I mean, maybe embrace the discomfort is fine, but I don't want to hug the suck.
Feel you, man. I feel you. I was gonna ask you, so like for people that maybe, because I've struggled with a little bit of addictive problems before in the past. I don't think quite to the same degree that you have, but different behavioral addictions, different substance addictions. For someone that maybe hasn't even struggled with that, like, how do you kind of deal with, because I feel like we all resonate with this idea or this feeling of like, fuck, I really regret doing this. I can't believe I was such a piece of shit. I can't believe I really fucked this up. Like, how do you kind of cope with or deal with like some of the mistakes you've made, like looking back and, dealing with like the shame and the guilt that you felt? Like, how do you deal with that now? What's a way that someone could overcome that, I guess, is a better question.
I think the best way to overcome that is time and distance between those episodes, right? Like as we grow, and I'll speak from a spiritual standpoint and in my faith, I had a really difficult time with it, because it's like, especially when there's always going to be echoes and reverberations, right? And you throw a pebble into a still pond, eventually that ripple hits the edges of the pond, and those echoes will last. But it's, for me, it was, I was having this discussion with a friend of mine named Rob Lewis, who's a great mentor, a strong Christian, and I asked him that, and he was like, "Dude, if you believe in a God that's omnipotent and has been able to forgive you, like, what makes you better than God, and why can't you forgive yourself?" And I'm just like, boom, you know what I mean? It's like, without that forgiveness, like, if we stay anchored to our past, we're never going to grow past it. And so it's like, dude, I just have to let it go, because that's not who I am today, right? And if we stay focused in today, and if I stay focused in the righteousness and in grace and in gratitude, then I'm not worried about what I did yesterday. I'm worried about what I'm doing today. And right now, today, I'm here talking to you. And so whatever happened, well, we will share, but that doesn't make me who I am. It's who I was. And I think that's just it. It's, if we stay stuck in the shame, if we stay stuck in that guilt, then we're going to repeat those same things, or we're never going to allow ourselves to heal. And, my healing started with going to therapy, because I knew I tried to get sober right around the time my son was born, when my ex-wife or we're separated. I don't know. We're my separated wife and I, when she first got pregnant, I tried to get sober, or I was sober off and on for like 9 months. And in this time I was like, okay, I need something deeper, right? I need to get to the root of what addiction is a byproduct of a much deeper issues, right? And, what have I been running from? And I was running from, anger, and anger is a root problem of fear. And so I realized that I was just a fearful grown child in some aspects. Like there was some trauma from my father and issues growing up, that I just never allowed myself to heal from. I never grew up. I never allowed to grow past that. And that fear and doubt and insecurities just became a ostrich with its head stuck in the ground. You can run and you can run and you can run. And when I was a child, it was anger and violence that I hid in. And then as soon as I got to about the summer going into 7th grade, I shoulder tapped some people for some 40s of Budweiser in the park, because that's what the guys that were 4 or 5 years older than me were doing. And like, I wanted to be a man, and men in my life all drank and did drugs and acted like jerks. So I was like, this is all right. I'm a man now because I'm almost 13. And as soon as I got that first experience of being drunk, I was like, this is awesome, man, because I feel good. You know what I mean? And then it's not like I was an instant alcoholic, but by the time I was a senior in high school, I was probably drinking 4 to 5 days a week, and to the point of like heavy intoxication. And then the harder drugs came shortly after I graduated high school. And then it was a battle with booze and alcohol from probably 1998 till 2020. So, yeah, I think that's it. It's that if you're not willing to heal, and if you can't let go of the past, you're not going to move forward into the present. And that's what it's about. It's about who I am today, not about who I was. Obviously I made amends with the people I've hurt, to the best I can. You can only say sorry so many times, and I won't say sorry anymore, because that sorry is coming from a person who I was, not who I am today. And I hope that the people who are most dear to me in my life, my immediate family and my inner circle, see the man I am and not the man I was.
I love that, man. There's so much in what you just said that I relate to a lot. The starting to drink at a young age, started drinking in high school. Like, I vividly, as you were saying that, a weird memory that I forgot about just came up into my head of being in grade 12 and being Like me and my buddies used to drink at school. And I remember I was so drunk one day at school that I had to leave. Like I was at like the second lunch bell rang. I was like, I gotta go home. Like I'm too fucked up to be here. And I was like, just I don't know why I forgot about that memory, but it was suppressed until just now. You just reminded me of it. And I was like, fuck, what a weird spot to be in, man. And fucking at 17 years old, dude. Who does
And
that?
how exactly? And not only that, it's like, I have teenage children now, and it's something I stress to my kids. So we're only presented with so much opportunity in this life, and the more mistakes we make at a young age, the less discipline and consistency we have, and the more mistakes we make, we whittle those opportunities down, and they get harder to recreate as we get older, because we're older and we have less time to create opportunity. And something I tell my son all the time, specifically my son, because and I've told my daughter too, but I hammer it home with my son because he's 3 years old, or 2 years 8 months older. And he, I'm like, dude, the thing with drugs and alcohols are always, always, always going to be there. You can choose to go get drunk, and just specifically in my county that I live in, we are in the heart of Oregon wine country. There are 600 plus wine labels, not wineries, but 600 different labels of wine being made. Like, there is ample opportunity to do, and not let alone the fact that, like, you can go buy 2 grams of methamphetamines or heroin or fentanyl or cocaine, and it's completely, you get a ticket here in Oregon, which has just been a devastating. The idea was good, but there was no critical infrastructure to keep this idea. It's a mess here because of it, right? Like, the drugs and alcohol are always going to be there. That's always a choice. If it gets bad, if you can't, but opportunity is not always going to knock. And the further we get into a hole, the harder it is to create opportunity. And I think that's just it. It's like, I don't know about you, but for me as a young boy, my dad basically abandoned me again from the most critical era period in my life. From like 14 to 20, I had no contact with my dad, and I had no direction. Like, I didn't know what the world had to offer, right? It's like, in my house, my stepdad was angry because he hated his job, and I knew I didn't want to go work at the steel mill because, like, why do I want to go work somewhere like where everyone just seems angry and hateful? My mom had my 2 little sisters who are a great deal younger than me, who I love dearly, but my mother was busy with raising a second, 2 young girls, and she didn't have the time nor the capacity to relate to an angry teenage boy. So where did I find solace and friends and people to look up to? Well, in a simple world of drugs and alcohol, because it's instant gratification. And as human beings, we are very weak. And as time's gone on, I mean, instant gratification is just crammed down our throats, from what we carry in our pocket every day, in our cell phone, to the foods that we can choose to eat that are just so readily available. Like, it's funny. It's like, I when I walk to the gym that I go to go work out, there's a McDonald's that I pass every day, and I get off work and I get to there right about 5 o'clock, and every day at 5 o'clock, that place is crammed full of people, families. It's just like, dude, how much money are you spending to feed your family poison? And I'm not saying it's bad to have it here and there, but when you're doing it like on a multiple time, 3 or 4 times a week, like, dude, that's stuff is not good for you. And it's like, how much more beneficial would it be if you were to take that same amount of money, go buy 2 pounds of chicken breast, some vegetables, and some rice, or just make the burger at home and like have that bonding moment, even if it's not around a traditional dinner table. Like, me and the kids, my kids and I don't necessarily sit around at the dinner table like we should. It's something that I'd like to implement a little bit more, but I still make a meal. We still get it, and we sit around and in front of the TV, on the TV trays, and we watch like some bad early 90s sitcom together, you know what I mean? Like, and it's a bonding opportunity. We're already, as a society, especially since the shutdown, we've already separated ourselves so much from one another. And anymore, it's just like, man, dude, it's that instant gratification. And I think that's why there's so many hurt people, and the people that are even more hurt and more separated and more scars. And so the addiction problems are just amplified. Boom, they've exploded. And I don't care if it's with drugs or alcohol, or if it's shopping, or it's what we eat. Like, I can walk down the street and see people who are struggling with some form of addiction left and right. It is crazy.
Yeah, it's something that you start noticing more the more you pay attention to it in yourself, for sure. The other thing that you said earlier, that fuck, man, I'm still thinking about it. I literally had to write it down. You can't read my chicken scratch writing, but I wrote down.
I understand.
I wrote down, if we stay anchored to where, I actually can't even read my own writing. If we stay where we, if we stay
I have that
anchored,
same problem all the time.
If we stay anchored to our past, we won't grow past it. I think that's what you said. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
But man, that resonates so much with me, because there's so many times, like, that's the one thing I ruminate on all the fucking time, is like, I can't believe I said that to this person, or I lied at this moment in my life when I should have fucking told the truth, or I can't believe I fucking got myself into debt, or I was using these drugs, or I was, there was so many fucking things where I look back at myself and I think, what a piece of shit. And I think now, like, when you say that, I'm like, man, I'm keeping myself in that mindset by, like, always reliving that in my brain.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, if we're constantly believing that, if we're constantly telling ourselves that, we're going to constantly be reliving that. And I think the thing is it's like, when we become consciously aware of that, if we pause before we either say that or do that and go, hey, I mean, this is what the outcome of what my choice used to be. And like early on in this journey, how I kept moving forward was simply, and it's something I guess I should have addressed when you first asked me that question, was, dude, I just did the exact opposite. Like, if I didn't know and I didn't have an example of what I should do in this situation, I just did the exact opposite of whatever choice I would have made, because I already know the outcome of the choices I would have made. They led me to a jack-o'-lantern smile and being 350 freaking pounds, brother. You know what I mean? So it's just like, that's my advice to people. They're like, I guess I should have said that. It's like, dude, if the guilt and shame are racking you, and you constantly make the same bonehead decisions, just do the damn exact opposite and see where that gets you, because it's not, at least it's not going to take you to that point of failure where you're going, I'm such an idiot.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So did you have like a moment, or like a rock bottom, or a moment where you were like, fuck, I really need to turn my life around? I know you said you wanted to get sober when your partner was pregnant with your son. Was that when you turned your life around, or was there another moment?
No, it got way worse after that, dude. I thought like at that point, like I was coming from rock bottom, and then I tasted real rock bottom, and it was I just it was weird. And I hadn't really thought about. It was something I was one of the last podcasts I saw Sachin, and he was talking about his experience during COVID, and like having these moments of realization, having to look at himself in the mirror because he didn't get to go anywhere, right? And I was like, holy cow, man, like this is boom. It was like one of those bombs went off in my head, like boom, idea. And it was during COVID, like the very first parts of like towards the end of February, right? Or I should say really close to my son's birthday, because things shut down here 3 days after my son's 13th birthday. So my son was born on St. Patrick's Day, and things shut down here. Like they quit school, I think, on the 19th of that March. So like 2 days after his 13th birthday, everything shut down here. And all of a sudden, like I couldn't hide anymore. You know what I mean? I was so faced with having to be a father. Like, even though we all lived in the house, like I had literally shut myself off from not only my family in the four walls I lived in, but I shut myself off from everyone, my mom, my sisters, my aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, you name it. Like I was in a really bad place, man. There's a point in time that I didn't leave my house for 8 months. And I mean, I did not even go outside. I didn't leave my four walls for 8 months. I didn't go further than my convenience store, which was less than a mile away. Like I never went into the town to go grocery shopping, like for 5 years. So it was bad. But it
What
was
the
in
fuck are
that
you eating?
moment.
How do you survive like that? How are you? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, my
you.
wife would go, well, dude, that's the crazy thing, right? Here I am strung out on crystal meth. And I was
Now, like
350
before.
pounds. Oh, no, yeah, I was. I was 350 pounds and strung out on meth. But all I ate was ice cream, root beer, whole milk, and Nutter Butters. That was my diet.
Holy hell,
and I
man.
sat. Like,
Holy hell, man.
And we can get into the chunk of that, but so it was during COVID and the realization, like, I don't think I really realized why I decided to make the changes that I did, but I think it was like I was forced to look at those echoes of my lifestyle and my children, and in the way the rooms, I mean, from everything, the way we were, like, I didn't get to escape anymore. I had to face the reality of our life and our lifestyle that was directly caused by my afflictions and my demons. And so it was probably like right after the shutdown that I was like, okay, I got to start getting healthy. And I started slowly weaning myself off of the dope. And then it was on my 40th birthday in August of 2020. When I said my first prayer. I mean, I'm like a 350-pound obese tweaker, atheist. Like if you'd have told me 2.5 years ago that I'd be going to church every weekend, that I would just come from an amazing, powerful, Christ-filled men's retreat at the beach, like I would have laughed at you and I would have told you how stupid you are to even believe in God. But I said a prayer and I was just like, God, in vain. I won't, for lack of a better term, I'll call it a prayer, but it was just a vain cry out to the heavens, right? I'm just like, dude, if you help me get off this, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I feel like this is a really good place to start. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's going to get any better, but I'm pretty sure like not smoking a half ounce of meth a week is probably going to be a good place to like start to heal. And then it was 1 month and 2 days after my birthday, so September 22nd of 2020, I was looking in the mirror and I was literally like, not only the weight, but I'm like, who the hell is this human being? Like, I don't recognize you. Like, there is nothing in the reflection in this mirror that says you're James Kenneth Yount III. You know what I mean? Like, and so I was just like, all right, fuck this. And I smashed my pipes, flushed the rest of my dope down the drain. And then I, like 20 minutes later, was like, what the fuck did you do? But from that moment forward, I remained clean. And that was the I wish that would have been rock bottom, you know what I mean? But then I lost my house, and shortly thereafter I started to heal, and I think my wife had enough. You know what I mean? I think she was just like, okay, you're getting better, and I don't really want anything to do with you anymore because I'm sick as can be, and I need to heal, and I can't give you any more energy. And God bless her, because Lord knows she should have ran away years ago, and she didn't. And because she loved me, and in the truest sense of the word. And even now, I don't know if we're in love. I know we're not in love with each other, but there's still a deep love that we have for one another. Because had she had left me, the suicide attempts I did take, they wouldn't have been attempts. I would have ended my life, because I really would have had nothing. But I think like the rock bottom really was like when we were forced to move from our home, even though I had been clean for probably like 6 months at that point. The insanity didn't go away, like you can't repress 5.5 years of life And then all of a sudden, like, quit doing hard drugs, and your chemical imbalance in my brain was out of control. And then it just flooded with emotion, man. It was insane, because it's like all of a sudden I was forced to see how failed my marriage was, how destroyed my kids were, the shambles of the life I had created. I hadn't worked in like 5 years. I was 350, I was 300 plus pounds. I'd started losing a little weight by then, because I was like, dude, you're fat and you need to do something about it. Like, this isn't healthy. And I would never put anyone down, because I understand the struggle, but I will speak for me. I was fat, and it was not healthy, and it wasn't good. And it wasn't necessarily genetic. It was pure. The evil had, I was gluttonous in every aspect of my life. But then it was like, dude, okay, for like a year, I stayed clean somehow. I stayed clean for like a year, but I was like just running around manic, trying to find that like one magic bullet or magic wand solution that was going to fix everything, that was going to get me my house back, give me my cars back, bring my wife back to me, help my kids, help myself, repair my financial situation. You know what I mean? And all I did was create more anxiety and more depression. Like, dude, it was not good. And then about a year ago, so like I had probably been clean for about 13 months. I heard a man named Jason Redmond do a TED Talk. And Jason Redmond is do you know who he is?
No, I have. I'm not. I know you were telling me about him before, but
you should
I
totally
haven't
check
listened
him
to
out,
much
man.
of him.
The dude is as close to a superhuman as I've ever met. And we've only talked in Zoom calls like this a few times one-on-one, and a bunch of times in a group setting. But he is somebody I would call at least an acquaintance or a friend. But this dude is telling his TED Talk, and he was shot in the face in Iraq. He's a Navy SEAL, obviously, in combat. Arm was almost severed. And so I'm hearing him tell me this TED Talk, and I'm just like, James, you're a fucking pussy. Like, what are you really complaining about? Here's this man who was physically and mortally wounded, sitting up here, like, and he has, I mean, he took a 308 round to the face. Like, the dude, and he tells a story about how he kept himself alive. Like, he knew that if he made it to the medevac hospital in Iraq, that he had a 90% chance of survival. And I'm convinced that God came down and helped him squeeze his heart till he made it there. But this guy tells me this whole story of valor and bravery, and that, you know what, and I'm like, I almost shut it off, because I was like, dude, what, I have nothing in common with this dude. But then all of a sudden he gets into his TED Talk and he makes it completely relatable. And he's like, we all have these wounds that we carry. And then I listened more, and I'm like, holy cow, something just resonated with me. And from that moment forward, like, that's really when my healing truly began. So it's like a year ago. That's when it truly began, because I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, it might be a lot of work it's gone through. I certainly can, because whatever my issues are not nearly as bad as like having my arm blown off and shot in the face. And so I joined a support group, the Overcome Army, which has given me an awesome inner circle of fantastic men and women who have overcome crazy obstacles in their own right, and shown me tools. And it's like, it helped me. That TED Talk is when that white noise and that manic, like, everything needs to be fixed right now, like, slowly started to relax. And it still took a while, and there's still moments where I'm like, I still got to fix this, like, right away, but it's getting easier, and my faith has helped make that easier. But man, that was rock bottom. Losing my house and realizing that, like, not only was I moments away from probably dying, but I was moments away from like losing my kids. And it did cost me my relationship with my wife. But man, I mean, I lost my home, my car, hot rods, all my stuff is still in storage, and was blessed with a miracle this weekend that I'm going to keep all my stuff in storage. You know what I mean? Because like I don't know, man. You don't create that much wreckage without having to pay some sort of consequence for it. And there's been some consequences that have I'm still dealing with, but that's okay, because like I've said, man, like it's been a lot of work, and God has shown me that, man, you stay diligent and you stay disciplined and consistent, you will be rewarded. It probably won't happen as fast as you want, but there is a reward on the other side of becoming disciplined and diligent and consistent in your approach in life.
Yeah, man. I love your story so much because of how, like I said, I feel like the same way that you look at Jason Redmond is like the way that other people can look at you, because there's people that might listen to this and they might not have been like the 350-pound tweaker, but they're listening to your story and be like, oh, like my problems, and then like this guy had problems, you know. Like I think comparison, I spoke with a guy named Om Gandhi, who's an endurance runner, like ultra marathon runner. And we talked a lot about comparison and how we compare our wins, but we also compare our losses to other people and how detrimental that can be. And
I actually listened to that podcast. I started following him after that because at one point in time, like I was like, I'm going to do an ultra marathon, but man, I'm in pretty good shape and I do run, but being 350 pounds and only 6'1", my knees are not in condition to be able to, like, as much as I tried, like, cause Sach was like, hey dude, I want to do a 100-mile race with you. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I started trying to like run 10 miles a day, and I'm like, to get going. And I'm like, dude, my knees, I mean, I'm not a rich man by any means. And I still have to do manual labor that an 18-year-old boy should be doing, and I'm 42. And so, and I work out a lot, and because physical fitness is, I mean, that really helped save my life. And I guess maybe something I should add into it is I have a big dog, a Presa Canario, which is a Spanish Mastiff. And he was a really big dog because his owner was a really big man. And that dog, I looked at him, and it was also one of those things in that moment of COVID going, like, dude, you have just ruined everything in your life. Like, here's this poor animal that's like can barely get up the freaking steps because he's already like a naturally big dog, and like you don't exercise him, you overfeed him, like you need to like. And he looked at me like, let's go for a walk. And I'm like, all right, Tank, let's go for a walk. And it was those walks that got this whole, like, that's literally how this whole thing got started. Like the fact that I'm alive, the fact that I'm mentally and physically and spiritually healthy was because of that four-legged guardian angel, and him looking at me like, dude, let's go for this walk. And he'd walk with me, and dude, and walking became my therapy. That's like that. It was like, dude, I was, like I was saying earlier, like I was so crazy in the head. I'm just like, dude, if you're going to be crazy in the head and like destructive mentally, like at least go do something positive physically. So I would literally just like, dude, people are like, what do you do besides walk? I'm like, I see you everywhere. I'm like, well, that's pretty much what I do right now. Like, dude, I'm too fat to go to work. Like, I don't have, like, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have, like, I was a chef in a previous life, and I didn't want to go back to doing that. And like, outside of that, I don't really have any longevity or skill set. And so like, I have to do remedial manual labor. And I was in no condition to do that until I probably got down to about 260 pounds. And that didn't happen until, probably January of last year. I think I hit about 260. So that was about me losing like between 80 to 100 pounds in January of last year. And then I was able to, I got a good job working as a janitor at the school district. And then like, that was like the most perfect job for me at that moment in time, because I still hadn't quite adjusted to being back into society yet. And I got to work alone. And it was just, easy, like busy work, throw my headphones in, listen to podcasts, and go to work. And then I got a lot of steps in doing that too. So about that time I adjusted my diet to like going into a ketogenic diet, and I started really shedding weight. And then sometime around the first year, I started going back to the gym, and then I started dropping like 30 pounds a month. But man, it was my dog that really got this ball rolling. And once I started losing the weight, my confidence started coming back, and that allowed me to work on my mental health. And then the mental health thing, I really worked on that. And then I thought the next step in my progression would be financial stability or growth or an opportunity. And then God was like, boom, here's your opportunity, buddy. My son, who I've never, I grew up in a church that was real hellfire and brimstone as a kid. I grew up in a very rural area, so I went to a really small, scary rural church that was like, dude, you're going to hell for everything you did. And so like, even though I was forced, I never listened or paid attention, because I was like, dude, it don't matter, you're just going to hell anyway, so like, what does it matter? But my son, probably like 6 or 7 months ago, was like, hey dad, I think I found my spirituality and I'd like to go to church. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so we went to church, and it was like, bam, a ton of bricks hit me in the face, because I can't even remember what the sermon was, but it was like, I didn't really want to believe in God at that point in time, but the sermon was so good because it resonated so much with about what I needed to hear. I'm like, cool, this was excellent, let's go back. And so I just kept going, and now it's like, this is the journey. And I feel like, maybe the next phase will be fine. It doesn't really matter. Like, eventually it will all work itself out if you just stay on course. Yeah, I don't even know where I'm going, but I'm a good talker anyway.
I appreciate it, man. I like it. It's easy to do these with people that like to talk like you do, man. You might have just touched on what I was about to ask you about, but I was going to ask you, I wanted to revisit. You talked about, like, after you had gotten clean, you still had to like have these issues, like you lost your home, you lost your relationship, etc. Like, was there points where you were kind of like, fuck, like, is this even all worth it? Like, should I continue down this path? Because I feel like sometimes we start making the right decisions and we get a bit of progress, and then we start like hitting like a bit of like we hit like roadblocks, or we get thrown curveballs, and we're like, fuck, am I even on the right path? Like, is this all worth it? Did you have that experience?
Yeah, and I just had it, like the worst I've experienced in like the 2 years of being clean. About, I don't know, between 3 weeks to a month ago. And it just kind of like, it was that whole, not necessarily like, woe is me, but like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? Like, dude, I go to work every day, I pray, I meditate, I exercise. Like, I have this amazing morning routine. Like, my morning routine is, and we can touch on that, but my morning routine is like, that is my strength, right? Like, I'm a firm believer, like, you win the morning, you win the day. Like, dude, anybody that wants to talk, if they listen to this and they want to message me and they want to know how I've managed it, and it's because of my morning routine. But for some reason, like, it was a Friday, and part of it was kind of loneliness, because, Ben, this journey is lonely. Like, I've changed so much. I don't want, not that I feel like I'm better than anybody, but there's just certain things I don't want in my life. And I think, that's an important part of recovery. And I don't care whatever it is you're recovering from, what we listen to, what we say to ourselves, what we speak, what we watch, what we hear, what we ingest food wise, what we ingest visually. It says a lot about us, and it will create your universe, right? If you just sit there and tell yourself you're a piece of shit, you watch things that remind you that you're a piece of shit, and you're going to act like a piece of shit. You hang out with a bunch of people who are pieces of shit, you're going to be a piece of shit. But I'm so tired of being broke. Like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm just like, my son was having a real difficult time, because I'm a fairly good sized guy. I'm 6'1", 195 pounds. I carry that well, but my son's like 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", and he's built like a lumberjack, man. He's a big, solid kid, and has a lot of potential as a football player, like an American football player, not soccer. Just in case any
Call
of
it football here
my
too.
northern
Don't worry.
brothers don't
No,
want to
no,
get
we call
confused.
it football here too. It's all good.
I know. All right. He hurt his knee. right? And he's depressed and upset because, like, he's pretty aware that his football season is over. So that was dragging me down, and some other things were happening. And I'm just like, I just want a break. And I'm like, dude, I battled it. But I think it is true. Like what you said is so true. And to be honestly, like the thing that probably helped keep me sober through that first year was physical fitness, because it was so easy as an addict, especially. We all love, human beings like to be in control, but addicts, we really love to have control. And the simplest thing is that we have control over our emotions and our effort, right? Like we can control those two things. I can't control what you do. I can't control what you wear. I can't control what you say. I can't, I can't control what comes at me, but I can control what comes in, and I can control what goes out. And I probably used, especially once I really started losing weight and I realized I could run again, I probably was using, no, not probably, I absolutely was using exercise to run away from my problems, but at least it was healthy. You know what I mean? And so it was seeing those transformations. Like once I got down to like 260 pounds and I was into a size 38 again, like I was like, man, that really helped boost my confidence. And so then I really got into like fitness, like I'm really going to do this. And so I was seeing results. And I think it was those results and having that outlet that helped keep it, because that was my issue. One of the issues that I had when I first tried to get sober. I put 2 9-month, I got for a total of 18 months. I stayed sober for 9 months, drank, stayed sober for 9 months, drank, when I was like 25 or 26, somewhere in that ballpark. And that was what I was like, I was like, oh, well, I'm being sober. Like, why isn't everything working out for me? Like, look at what I'm doing. But that's not how it works. That's just not right. And it's just like, in my walk with Christ, it's not how it works. Just because I've decided to like follow Christ and his principles and teachings doesn't mean my life is going to be good or like instantly perfect. Like it's good because I have tools and I have a relationship with God that helps me get through my day. But just because you've made changes, and then you can't have unreal expectations. Like the only thing I truly ever expect is that I'm gonna meet resistance, I'm gonna have roadblocks, right? But it's those resistance and roadblocks that let us know we're on the right path. And so you just stay the course. Like I said before, like I already know the outcomes of, like if I were to quit here and just think that I had arrived, well, then my ego is going to start writing checks that my ass can't cash. And I'm going to end up in a position where it won't happen right away, but it's going to be a slow spiral right back to where I came from. And I don't think I have another bounce back in me. You know what I mean? At 42 years old, like, and spending a good 20 years or so in pretty heavy addiction, like I don't think I got another bounce back, and I don't want to find out. To be honest with you, I don't even want, just like, there's not an option. Like, I approach my sobriety that way. And there's things I won't compromise. If there's a decision based in front of me, and I look at that decision, and it's going to hurt my relationship with my children, it's going to sever the time that I have with them, if it's going to compromise my physical and mental health, if it's going to compromise my sobriety, if it's going to compromise my connection to God, then I absolutely refuse to do it, even if it were something that was like, hey man, here's an opportunity to make a bunch more money, but that money meant that I didn't get to spend time with my kids. It meant that I didn't get to go to the gym and do the things that help keep me healthy and present and the best version of me. Then I will say no, because those are the things that have helped keep me sober and clean and moving forward, even though sometimes it's not as fast as I like. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of reward in discipline and consistency. It's not instant. It's a slow reward, but man, when I've felt that reward, if somebody would have told me like 20 years ago when I was 15 or 16, that like, dude, you can get a high like you'll never experience in your life from doing things right and being disciplined, I'd have been like, sweet, bro, let's find out. Let me feel it. Cause I'll tell you what, like the rewards that I've gotten when these moments of like, whoa, like what I think most people would call leveling up is like, dude, it's like nothing I've ever experienced. And I've pretty much done everything under the sun. You know what I mean? As far as drugs and alcohol go, like I'm pretty sure I've done them all, or at least enough of them to know that like I know, so I think it's the exercise, and it was the fitness, like finding a new reward system that helped get me through that first year. Because it's funny that you say that, because I've thought about that often lately, and because of my faith, I was like, dude, that was just God guiding me, because, honestly, like, even in the situation I'm in now, I think most people would look at my life like, dude, I live in a 2-bedroom, single wide trailer, with more people that can fit in there. I don't have a room. I sleep on a cot and an air mattress. But I have a sense of joy and contentment and peace of mind that I've never experienced in my 42 years of life. Like, my anxiety is lower. My anger is pretty much gone. Like things that have plagued me for as long as I have real conscious memory, or like at least my own memories. You know what I mean? Like, those chains are breaking, and if they haven't break, they're on their last link. And there's a lot of when you can start finding happiness in suffering and in loss, and you can see the beauty of the darkness that you've come from, man, there's a lot of power in that, like tons of power. Like, it's empowering. And I think in this journey, I've got kind of start like learning about Stoicism, like the philosophy of Stoicism. It talks about that a lot in Stoicism, like, removing the comforts and pleasures that you have in life, and see how you can adapt to them. Like, I'm not saying like anyone should just run out and get rid of all their stuff and go be a hobo on the street, but like, dude, try taking a cold shower, like a fully cold shower twice a week. You know what I mean? Like, because then you have a greater appreciation for the comforts that we do have. And those of us that live in the Western world, like, we're, even as broke as I am, like, I'm living vastly better than a huge, massive population of this world. And we take so much for granted here because we have so much excess. And the thing was, losing all that excess is where I was able to find like real lasting joy. And I try not to use the word happiness, because happiness and nice are like fleeting, and they're not necessarily real. Like, joyful and kindness, those are lasting experiences, and they're true, genuine expressions of my soul. Were nice, I don't know, but that's kind of how I've managed to stay sober. It was like exercise, and it becoming probably sort of an addiction at first, but being able to have something that I can control, man, and I could control what I ate, and I control my effort in changing that. And so, and I was seeing results, and those results kept me confident. And had I not have been doing that, had I just been like, okay, you're going to be fat for the rest of your life, I highly, highly, highly doubt I would have made it through that first year without at least drinking my face off. And that's why, that's a big reason why I choose not to drink. I don't know if I'm necessarily an alcoholic anymore, but it's like, man, if I drink, I already know I'm going to start making compromised decisions, because it's going to compromise my values. And if I'm compromising my values, and I decide to do maybe not meth, but I do some cocaine, or I go and have one night stands, like, I'm going to start compromising those values. Then what's going to stop me from going down a deeper compromisation? Because I have no willpower when I'm drunk. Like, dude, you like, James, let's go go do something, Steve. You bet, no problem. Like, that's just how I've always operated. So I know that to be true. But I honestly have to say, it's definitely been it was the exercise and physical fitness, and then adding diet that kept me sober. Like I said, I don't think it would have happened without it.
Yeah, man. I feel the exact same way. I find that fitness and kind of discipline. I'm also a big fan of Stoic philosophy. Like, if you listen to this podcast, you hear me talk about it all the time. It engulfs a lot of the books I read, a lot of the YouTube channels that I watch, a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and I love that kind of stuff as well. And I want to jump into the whole fitness stuff. I want to kind of get into that as well. But I wanted to ask you first, because I don't know if you struggle with this. This was one of the things, like, I know when I started kind of dealing with my addiction, I struggled a lot because people would ask me, what's your DOC? What's your drug of choice? And I like kind of always joke with people. I'm like, whatever's in front of me. Like, that was pretty much where I was at. Like, I would just use whatever was in front of me. I used to joke. I'd be like, put something in front of me, I'll delete it. Like, I'll just ingest whatever you put in front of me. And that's how I was for
Yeah.
a long time. And I kind of bounced from like substance to substance with what I was using, whether it was like booze or drugs, like weed, harder stuff. Like, I never got to meth, thankfully. Like, I think I might have done it
Yeah.
once
You're
by
grateful.
accident. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that was my experience with heroin. Like, I actually did it once on, well, someone told me it was opium, and then I smoked some. This was not opium. And I never liked like the depressant high. Speed became my, this is going to sound really, really, booze was always my drug of choice. Whiskey, man. Like, I love, give me a bottle of Irish whiskey and some ice cubes and a pint glass, and I'm a happy human being. Like, I drank a lot of whiskey, like, and that was my drug of choice. But
wait, hold up. Let me
how I
finish
ended.
what I was going to ask. I was going to ask.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're all good. You're all good. I was going to ask you, like, I kind of was like a substitution guy. Like, I kept like jumping from substance to substance, like kind of substituting my addictions. You kind of touched on this with fitness, but did you deal with that at all? Like, obviously maybe you were just about to get into it because alcohol was your original addiction.
Yeah,
But
I definitely was like, dude, and I was a dumpster. You know what I mean? I had spells where I loved psychedelics. I mean, I smoked pot every day of my life for as long as I can remember. I mean, I honestly, even in my sobriety and cleanliness, I still, like, after I was taking some antidepressants when I was doing therapy, and then they started making me weird, and I started using edibles in the evenings to help calm my anxiety so I could sleep. I haven't used that in a long time, but I was still using cannabis in some form for quite a while through this new adventure. So pot was always on the table. Cocaine and whiskey were always my drugs of choice. And then I had done meth here and there for maybe like a year at one point in time, and then did it again for maybe like a year and a half. But it was this last time, there's some things that were happening, mainly my dad getting sick from cancer and some other stuff that started happening in my life, where when you're an addict and an alcoholic, that's your escapism, right? That's what we do to cope with whatever the situation is. And this is going to sound really ridiculous, but I was like, you can't drink right now, because if you start drinking, you're going to be angry and abusive. So I'm like, I know what's a good idea. The guy I work with is doing meth, so I'll just do meth because I'll be able to function and no one will know. You know what I mean? Like, this is like stupid. like, dude, like, whatever you got to do to convince yourself to justify your actions, I guess. So that's, but I was that same way. Like, I would bounce from here to here to here. But I think, like, honestly, it was always alcohol for me, because man, like pot, I maybe early on when I was a teenager, pot was like a way to escape from my pains. Pot just became like smoking, like it never really was like, I felt like it altered who I was. It helped me relax, it put a smile on my face, but it was always probably booze and then either cocaine or speed for me. But the booze was, it was always a guarantee. You know what I mean? Like, it was always going to make me feel better, gonna put a smile on my face. I used to call it a $25 vacation in a bottle, right? Like, I go out and buy a fifth of whiskey, and I'm gonna have a break from whatever it was I was running from. And so, but yeah, man, there was a point in time in my life, whatever was on the table, I was going to do it, because, when you start experimenting with everything under the sun, like, it just didn't matter.
absolutely. Hold on. I gotta run to the washroom really quick. I gotta pause. I gotta pee. I've been drinking a lot of water, but
yeah.
I want to keep talking.
Good.
Give me like 1 minute.
Not a problem.
Okay, I'm back. We're back.
Awesome.
Sorry, man. I
No
had to get
worries,
rid of
man.
that so I could keep focusing. But
Yeah, dude,
yeah.
I understand, man. Especially as you get older, it gets to be much more difficult to hold up for very long, as I've found.
Yeah, I've been drinking a lot of water today, man. A lot of coffee too. But yeah, dude, I wanted to jump into the whole idea of like kind of recovery and discipline and fitness and kind of how that all gets started. Because I know like when I first started trying to, work out, like I got into bodybuilding. I always grew up playing sports. And then I kind of when I stopped smoking cigarettes, I was like, okay, I need to get my cardio back. I need to get my breathing back, my respiratory system back. So I tried running for the first time, and I ran to the end of my parents' block because I was still living at home. And I like literally I threw up. I was like getting sick from running. Like I was like getting cold sweats and fucking like I was so out of shape, man, because I was smoking so much that it was just like my lungs were just like crying. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, how did you kind of go from like this 350-pound tweaker, self-described 350-pound tweaker to like you're jacked now, man. Like 195, 6'1", like that's pretty fucking good stats, man. Like how did this
Dude,
all
and
happen?
I'm down. Dude, it was like it was crazy, and like I don't know how like the 350 pounds is an estimate. I could have been bigger. Um, I didn't like I wore like I don't know if you ever watched The Simpsons, but there's this episode where Homer like tries to make himself so fat that he can collect SSI. Like I didn't get to the point where I was just walking around in a muumuu, but I was at the point where I was wearing like
Oh man. So for those of you listening or watching this, my internet just crapped out and I lost James for a bit, but I think I fixed it now. We're gonna try and finish up this interview because I am running out of time. That kind of threw a monkey wrench in the
yeah,
plans. But how much time do
yeah,
you got?
I'm
You got a bit more time?
probably like 20 to 30 more minutes, something like that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say we'll try and
I've
wrap
been
this up.
away from home all weekend, and I yeah, and yeah, I am. Yeah, let's get this wrapped up. So I think we were talking about how my fitness journey and how I've managed to lose all this weight. So like I was saying, I knew I was bigger, and I shared that picture with you. Or I'm well over. I'm 300, at least 350 pounds. Um, so it was right. It was July 4th weekend. I was staying down at the beach. I was like, I knew I had been losing weight. At this point, I had been walking very regularly, probably putting in about 4,000 steps a day. So for a few months at this point, but like you got to understand, like 4,000 steps a day at that point was like that was a huge accomplishment because when I first started out, like 600 steps going up the hill and back, like I struggled going up a hill, and the hill was only 2 blocks long. I mean, it's fairly steep, but like, dude, I was in bad shape. But it was like, okay, I'm like, I could put a pair of Levi's on again. I bought a pair of 44s. Which is huge because I'm down to probably like a 34 or 32 at this point. I could probably squeeze myself into a 32 if I really wanted to like look how skinny I am. But because of how big I was, like, and I'm in the best shape of my life, but I carry a lot of extra skin, and sometimes that really bugs me because it's like just like my teeth, I don't know if you can see, I'm missing a lot of teeth, like, from fighting and from meth, like I'm missing some teeth. And so sometimes that can be a really rack on my it's hard to move past everything when there's a constant scar, you know what I mean, and reminders of like what was. But it's like, dude, I'll take the shape that I'm in and carrying a bunch of extra skin, and maybe the fact that out of my own vainness, right, like underneath all that skin, and it's not fat, it's just extra skin, there's a six-pack, and I'm in pretty good shape. But it started with like, okay, I stepped on a scale for the first time the weekend of July 4th, and it was 322 pounds. And I'm like, I was hoping it'd be like, that was about 20 more pounds than I was hoping for. And I'm like, okay, do you really got to do something about this? And so I started really upping my steps. I was staying with my mom's former boyfriend on the Oregon coast. And dude, I just was like, all right. I started getting up early in the morning, and I would go for a 4-mile walk. And then I would come back and hang out, and I started really adjusting what I ate, not necessarily like in a good way, but I would really control my portion control, because I'm like, okay, you need to start doing this. And that worked really well for quite a while. And I would probably start putting in like I mean, it was hard work because I was still a 320-pound man. I started putting in like 6 to 8 miles a day. And then I started really seeing some weight loss by about a year ago this time. I was probably down below right around the 300-pound mark. Like, so I probably lost another 30 pounds between July and the end of October. And so I really started noticing that, like, a double extra large kind of was fitting better. But I'm still a pretty big dude. And I'm like, okay, tried jogging. So I would walk a block and then I would jog a block. And then I did that for quite a while and started losing a little bit more weight. And I'm like, all right, I had tried losing weight previous and I had a lot of success with the ketogenic diet. And so right around Thanksgiving time, I decided, like, okay, I'm going to go into a keto diet. And then I really started losing weight. And then the first of the year, I was comfortable enough at being about 260 pounds. Like, okay, let's get yourself in the gym. And I was like they say that I got a personal trainer for a couple of weeks because it had been a long time since I had worked out. I'm like, I need some direction. So they weighed me and I was like 270 pounds. And I'm like, okay. And from there it became, I stayed in ketosis, doing a keto diet, and I was losing 30 pounds a month. And so from January to March of this year, I think by March I was down to like 240. And then from there, man, I was just really focused in on eating extremely clean and healthy. Although this weekend being away with a bunch of, and the people who don't follow the same diet plan I did, I ate what was there. And there's a sense of guilt around that because it's like, due to, my own issues, I guess, of, not like I'm going to just like eat one weekend badly and I'm going to put 150 freaking pounds back on, but there's like I feel like I've been given God has given me a recipe of success. And if I deviate from that, then don't do that. But man, it's like, and now I pretty much, I'll do cardio on the weekends. I try to run still, but usually on the treadmill because my ankles and knees have been bugging me. I do a lot of hiking on the weekends. Like I'll do a lot, like probably, I don't know, I hike enough on the weekends that I burn 1,000 active calories. So that's probably about 10 miles a day, Saturday and Sunday. Not this weekend so much because I'm getting to spend some time with you. And then I was at the beach, but even at the beach, I still did my morning routine, and that my morning routine is huge for me. But man, but now it's like, man, I eat really clean. I eat it about 2,700 calories a day. I burn about 3,100 active and with my BMR. And so I'm down to like 195, float right between that 195, 199. I went from the first time I took my body fat, I was like 28% body fat, and I'm down below 14% right now. So it's been a radical transformation. And I think what I really started liking about it is I started seeing, like I said, it's been great for my mental health and my self-confidence. And like at first I'm just like, I want to get down to 215. That was my goal. And then once I got to about 220, 215, and now it's just like, I just want to see how far I can push it. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to, like, where can it get? Like how strong, how healthy can I get? Because I enjoy it. I think it's easy as a former addict to get caught up in routine, and especially if you start having a successful routine, because really addiction and routine are sort of like conditioning and discipline, right? Like conditioning is sort of discipline's ugly cousin, or something along those lines. But it's been huge, man. Like I love like that you guys do those mental health walks, man. Like I really want to come up and do that, because I think there is a lot of healing in motion. Like people are like at this retreat this weekend, they're like, oh, did you go out and run? Like, you do that for exercise? I'm like, no, man, I don't do that. That is not my go-to exercise. It's my exercise for mental health, because I guess for me, it's like the running or the walking or the hiking, it's a way for me to kind of channel in my thoughts If that makes sense. Like I can really focus in on one thought because I'm pretty AD, like squirrel. Like I'll bounce around with a lot of thought to thought, but when I'm in motion and when I'm moving, um, I can kind of like, if I get distracted from a thought, I can just focus myself back in. And it's the same way with my meditation. It's like I can just kind of slowly focus myself back in on a key thought that I need to either work through or I need to expound on. And journaling is another big part of that. But man, I I can't encourage anybody enough to, if you want to make changes, man, first of all, start small. But the great place and the best place to start is with your physical health. And by physical health, I mean what we eat, how often how long we sleep, and the amount of effort we put into exercise. And I don't care if it's just walking or 5 push-ups a day. Like if you can only walk around the block and that's the condition you're in, you walk around the block until you can walk 2 blocks. Because without a good foundation in physical health, I feel like you're never going to get to that next plateau of mental health, and then you're not going to get to personal relationships, and you're not going to make it into spiritual realm, and you're not going to make it into the professional realm without having a strong foundation in physical health, because our physical health reflects so much of who we are and what we are. I think it's so important, and I think it gets a lot of attention, but it doesn't get the attention that it truly deserves. And especially when it comes to sleeping and eating, are so vital to being healthy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, man. That's my biggest thing. Like, I'm glad that you brought up the walks that we do, the hikes that we do, and stuff like that, because like there's so many times where we'll be on like a group hike, and I've talked about this with the group as well, where it's like we'll be hiking through the forest or just walking through like kind of like a nature walk, and you'll kind of look and you'll see like people kind of break off into like groups of like 2 or 3, and then they're having there's a lot of times where I'll just be kind of like quiet and listening in. And there's people that are like having the deepest fucking conversations with people that they've literally just met. And you're like, man, there's something so therapeutic of being able to just like move. And I feel like a lot of us like sometimes can't process our thoughts until we're moving. Like that's why working out can be so therapeutic, man.
Exactly. Exactly. I actually mentioned that to some fellows this weekend at this retreat. I'm just like, and there's also like, especially with men and women, it's much easier to communicate when we're side by side, when we're actually not like having true conversation. I'm not saying like necessarily understanding the body language and seeing all that, but like having like those deep conversations you said, when we don't have to look at the other person, when we don't have to see their reaction to like maybe some fucked up shit that we say, it's a lot easier when we're side to side. And like you said, when we're in motion, we're also pulling in a lot more oxygen, and we're oxygenating our blood, and that blood is, getting to our heads. So we're able to think a little bit more clearly. And I think you nailed it, man. There is a lot of healing, and especially when we're in the presence of nature and in creation, man. We are really present then, and we don't have the TV, we don't have music, we don't have, especially if you go somewhere where you don't have cell phone service, like then people are going dun, 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 on their phone and checking their Instagram and checking their Facebook or Twitter or stock exchange, whatever. It's like then we really are able to start focusing in on why you're there. And I think, dude, those walks are freaking awesome, and I think you definitely got to keep doing that, because it's a powerful tool to help people, and then it's something that people can just easily do themselves. You know what I mean? And it's so therapeutic without having to go see a therapist. You know what I mean? And you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can make yourself physically healthy and mentally healthy. And that's exactly why I started walking and then running and then into the gym. Is just that. It's like, dude, if I'm going to be crazy in my head, then, and I'm going to tear myself apart, at least let me do something healthy for my physical self, and I'll get to the mental self when it presents itself.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. Well, in the essence of time and respect out of your schedule, man, I'll let you get back to your life, and I appreciate
All
your
right,
time
brother,
a
man.
lot,
I
man.
appreciate so much your time too, man. And I look forward to getting to know you better and continually sharing. And like, please, you never feel ashamed to reach out if you're struggling with something. And same goes for anybody that listens to this. Like, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Um, You know, a big part of this journey for me, if I can close, is that I never want anyone to feel alone. And you don't have to know me. You don't even have to like me. You know, and you don't even have to expect a response back. Sometimes just communicating and saying, "Hey, I'm really fucked up, and this is where I'm at," is all that needs to be said. Like I did that for life. You know, some of my mentors in my life, I would say that I would DM them or send them a voicemail and be like, "I don't really need you to respond. If you do, that's great. I just need to communicate this to another human being so I can let go of it." And I don't have to do that so much now because I've learned the tools from the people I asked that from, you know, and most of the time I'm pretty good at with prayer and my contact with God to get through stuff. But still, sometimes I'm just like, hey, I need to vent this, because if I don't vent this, I'm going to hang on to it. And if I start hanging on to it, then it's going to get me to the point of anxiousness or worry. And once I get to that point, then I know that that leads to me into a depressive state, because I've been through a couple of really massive depressive states in my life. The last one literally almost cost me my life. But dude, I humbly and graciously accept. I'm happy to be here with you today, and thank you for your time and energy into making this happen, brother.
Dude, I appreciate it a lot, man. I really do, because I like your patience, man. I appreciate that when my connection dropped, but I also love the way that you explain your story in such a relatable way and such a kind of an inspirational way as well, man. You're definitely somebody I like to chat with a lot, man. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
man. I think that's the cool thing about it is like I often tell people my goal is to just be the unlikely hero of my own story. I think if anybody who really has known me for a long period of time, I don't think anybody would anticipate me being where I am today, because I was the last person that anybody thought would change or would have the discipline to change. And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Hell yeah, man. I usually get people that kind of give like a little bit of an inspiration or like a motivational message at the end of the episode, but you've kind of just sprinkled it in throughout the entire thing, man. I love it, man. Thank you so
All
much.
right, brother. Have a great afternoon and into your evening. We'll
Yeah,
talk
you
soon.
as well, man.
All right,
Have a good
bye-bye.
one. Bye.
You too. Bye.